Stop it. Hold on. Bane of my existence, you random construction workers, why must you vex me such? Storchaeus, Storn, Bones, and Butter be hovering outside of my door for this much noise to be being made. Oh! Anger?
Just... that should... Yeah. What if... Just the restraint on that. Just... Oh! Anger.
Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I am what a dreamer in a dreamer's world might think is James.
And today, welcome to the Bestiary, Monster Manual, A through Z. And what are we dreaming of in this episode, James?
We're delving beneath the earth and hopefully encountering the strange and alien world of the stone giants.
These ones are, of all the giants, I think almost the hardest to understand, primarily because their way of life is deeply complex and spiritual, and they do not welcome outsiders. So explaining the way they live to others, it's not a matter of it being incomprehensible so much as they just don't.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think that's the way the stone giants would like it. They would prefer it to stay that way. Most likely the craftsmen and artists and philosophers of ancient Astoria, stone giants live a life of isolation, not from each other, but from outsiders. They're tribes living in underground caverns and tunnels beneath the earth, and valuing artistry and grace and aestheticism over all other things.
Yes, and artistry and grace take many forms. They view their athletics as a form of art. They believe caring for their body and even the ways that they fight are very artistic in that way, but that's not necessarily their highest form nor their function. They're not necessarily warriors, though they will fight you, mostly to keep people out. But for them, the highest form of art is stone carving. And they believe that when they have found a rock that speaks to them, and they will spend years looking for that rock and trying to find the meaning in that rock, that their hands become holy and part of the nature of their god, and that they are speaking his words through the stone.
That for them, art and I suppose this isn't exactly a novel idea, but for them, art reveals meaning and has a spiritual significance. As you say, they're greatest stone carvers who tend to actually be the leaders of their tribes. It's not based on strength or political skill or anything like that. It is their greatest artists and stone carvers who lead them. But that when they are engaged in that act of producing art, their hands become almost the hands of their god, Scoraeus Stonebones himself.
What a name. It's so cool. They're so cool.
And among all the children of Anam, Scoraeus Stonebones is said to be the wisest and the most knowledgeable. In fact, even teaching things to the other patron giant deities. He taught Thrym to carve runes. He taught the basics of craftsmanship and blacksmithing to Surta. So again, that sense of them being the philosophers and some of the wisest of their kind, and some of the most spiritual, very much ringing true.
They also are great keepers of magic, and they have amongst them not only philosophers and almost what would, if they were of a different humanoid race would almost be considered a clerical nature. There's also that sense of wizardry as well.
Yeah. Quite hierarchical, as many other giant societies are. In this case, again, based around their artistic skill. And many stone giants will, in fact, apprentice to those of a higher standing that are perhaps older, more experienced, more skilled in the production of art and carving. So that obviously living in an underground world, their life schedules are not really built around day and night as ours might be, but in fact where or what they need to be, where they need to be or what they need to be doing in terms of their place in this hierarchy. An apprentice to a master stone carver may need to be awake at a different time than their master in order to make sure that breakfast is ready when their master wakes up, or that they need to produce a certain tool that their master might need, or they might do any of the other kind of myriad tasks that an apprentice might do for their master. So a stone giant tribe is going to be about sort of half to 3/4 awake at any one time.
And that, I think, also lends into, again, another sense that they have, which is their relationship to dreaming. They believe that dreams hold prophecies. They also have a belief that the upstairs world, for lack of a better way of putting it, that the surface world is a dream.
Yeah,
that it's
not
necessarily
entirely real. That nothing up there is really true.
And in a sense, again, talking about the way that they view things, it's so very detailed and complex. That also comes back to, again, that sense of giants being above things in both a literal sense and in their mentality, a very figurative sense, that they believe that they were built above the rest of the earth and therefore to control it. And how that plays through with stone giants is not necessarily, as we've seen in previous giants, a sense of warlike nature or a sense of consumption, but that sense that they are kind of spiritually above it, that everything that happens outside of their realm is a dream and therefore not entirely relevant to them.
Which kind of factors into one of the admittedly kind of few ways in which you might end up fighting a stone giant. One, of course, being that you wander into their territory and you ignore the warning boulder that crashes off the wall nearby you. The other being that a giant on the surface, one, is likely to not be a typical example of their tribe, because the ones that you're going to see out and about in the world are probably going to be guards or hunters or maybe even exiles, because they could not measure up to their tribe's standards of artistic skill. And so we're so far down that, they're only good for this one thing. But if a stone giant is on the surface world, it believes it's dreaming. And dreams have no consequence. So why not squish the tiny person?
If you're irrelevant, you're irrelevant. And that also, again, even if you meet them down in their lair, like you were saying, they're going to warn you to leave. And you can talk with stone giants. I know they're absolutely, you can negotiate with them to pass through. They're more likely to ask for a task than perhaps a physical good, although if you have something of artistic value or merit, they might trade with you for that. They don't have money. These things are very inconsequential to them.
They have no use for money.
Not particularly. But if they give you a warning and they ask you to leave and you do not leave, you're not consequential. You are an invader, and a very, very small one at that. Your life and death is so small in comparison to the centuries that they live, and many, many years of which just simply staring at one particular rock. You're just not relevant to a stone giant.
Yeah, you're interrupting their important work and need to be dealt with.
And going kind of around this, in the art, you can kind of see that in his expression. This particular stone giant has that expression deeply on his face of judgment. He seems to be looking at you and thinking about what exactly are your intentions here.
Like, he doesn't seem exactly sort of aggressive or angry as such. He just looks kind of pissed off.
Your presence is offensive, I think, to this particular stone giant, which is, of course, deeply true. When we talk about the way that they view their own bodies and stuff, there's that sense of almost like an Olympian way of training your body.
Absolutely.
It almost looks very much like it was cut out of stone.
Indeed. And even when just throwing rocks, which sometimes they will just practice throwing and catching rocks amongst themselves, there must always be this sense of grace, athleticism, and I think in this very cut physique that we see here, this stone giant has obviously taken great care to hone his body into something he views as aesthetically beautiful. And he's definitely ready to bash you because he's apparently ripped a stalagmite or tite out of the earth and is using it as a club.
But again, you can see that sense of artistry. This particular club has been carved. The top has been worn completely smooth. Yes, it is a natural piece of rock, but alternatively, it's been cared and carved into a practical shape. And that speaks so much to the way that stone giants view their surroundings. If we look at their stats, again, you can see these guys are not as scary to fight. They're only a challenge rating 7. They're not warriors. Just because they're higher on the Ordning does not necessarily mean they are designed to fight. They have stone camouflage. They really view themselves as existing as part of the stone, and so they can hide amongst it. But one of my favorite stats that they have is actually that they can catch rocks thrown at them. So I think very much of the monk ability, the catch missiles. I'm imagining, again, that extreme athleticism of just catching it as it's thrown. It's so scary.
I don't know, for whatever reason, stone giants have decided to attack a town, and the town's like, well, we have catapults.
Pong! And now it's mine.
Oh no. That wasn't supposed to happen.
No, it's mine. And they have dark vision. Again, they live very deep underground. They have a pretty high passive perception. They are paying attention to the world around them. They are observers of the natural world.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, possibly, maybe most out of all the giants in the Ordning are kind of very much of their environment and are in tune with the places that they make their homes and where they go about what they see as important. Thank you ever so much for joining us here at the Bestiary Monster Manual A to Z. All men dream, but not equally, and certainly not as well as the stone giants. Let us know about some of the dreams that you've had in the comments down below. And while you're there, you can like the video. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you'll also find our various social media presences, including our Patreon. We truly appreciate all of our patrons, and your contributions really do help, so thank you once again. Join us next week when we examine the Frost Giant and check out some other of our videos